Welcome to our 2020 Voice and Vision virtual conference. In 1997, Voice and Vision Incorporated became a 501c3 nonprofit organization under the name of BCCST, Inc. The newly established team responded to the advocacy need in Bucks County to capture the experiences of patients being discharged from state-run mental hospitals to ensure services in the community were meeting people's needs. What an ingenious concept. It was their voice and the family voice that were missing in the development and monitoring of mental health services. BCCST, Inc. was one of many teams in Pennsylvania who proved capturing these experiences was critical and had the potential to be transformative. This movement grew in the Commonwealth, which expanded BCCST Inc.'s scope to also interview children, teens, young adults, and family members receiving services for developmental disabilities, mental illnesses, co-occurring disorders, and addictions. As mental health and substance use services and supports become more recovery focused, mentoring and peer support services began to be highlighted and sought after. All BCCST employees were people who have personal experience with mental illness, developmental disabilities, and/or addictions. So we were excited to expand into offering peer support services by implementing College Plus. Around the same time, staff began a peer support program at Norristown State Hospital through the Campaign of Hope, which continues today. In 2007, based on the organization's history, growth, success, and the need for continued expansion, we changed our name to Voice and Vision, Inc., which reflected our new corporate identity, mission, and expansion. The growth continued throughout the years with innovative programs and increased education, support, and advocacy. By listening to the voice of individuals and families, we were inspired to develop the Help and Hope Guide series. These guides educate individuals, families, professionals, and community members about key issues regarding mental health, disabilities, and substance use, so people are able to access critical information needed for their overall health and wellness, while also offering personal stories that keep hope alive through all the ups and downs of life. Advocacy remains a core component of Voice and Vision, Inc., noted by the Family Advocacy Center that offers coaching and support to apply practical tips and navigating systems and to help each family address their specific needs. Voice and Vision, Inc. continues to gather the experiences of over 1,600 people who receive services in Bucks, Chester, and Delaware counties. Our systems advocacy work promotes change through taking the patient experience to insurance companies, county officials, and others with influence, who then incorporate our data in their review process to improve the quality of services. Voice and Vision, Inc. continues to expand our peer support programs located in Bucks and Delaware counties, too, with the newest peer support program, ComPeer Corp, supporting veterans. Please see our services and success links on our website for more information about the history of Voice and Vision, Inc. and our work. If you need help in any of these areas, please contact us. We can help you find the help that you need. Thank you.
Please help me welcome moderator Alicia S. Johnson, MS, BSN, Board Certified Registered Nurse and Humanitarian, to this year's 2020 Holistic Virtual Conference.
Good morning and welcome to the 2020 Voice and Vision Virtual Conference. My name is Alicia Johnson. Today is our second installment, and if you missed last night, all I can tell you is that the buffet was very well accommodated and we walked away full. We were blessed by the shared relatable experiences of Trinity Banks and Charles Green. Then we were provided the 6 dimensions of authentic self by Dr. Letitia Webb. We also learned how to balance technology and our lives, and were given helpful tips from Stephanie Humphreys. And lastly, Michael Harper Esquire shared the programs and resources available through Voice and Vision, where we learned that advocacy is a process we are all equipped to perform. We thank you for joining us today. We hope that you will open your hearts and your minds to the information that's going to be received. And we have a lot of special treats in for you today as well. I wanted to let you know that none of this would be possible without the efforts and the ingenious resources of our event producer, Miss Ebony Edwards. Ebony.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And I just want to say thank you all for attending today. As a conference producer, it is my job to really communicate the conference theme, the company goals, and to all educate you on the company and who we are. And that's what our founder has done thus far, Valerie Melroy. You'll meet her soon. Our 2-day virtual conference, last night it left me empowered. I want you guys to feel empowered too, inspired, and ready to share about who we are to all your family and friends, your neighbors, everyone. I really feel that this is my passion, and I love what I do. So thank you all for tuning in today. We have so much in store. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
This conference also would not be possible without the voice and the vision behind Voice and Vision. And at this time, I'd like to offer a warm welcome to Valerie Melroy, who is the founder of Voice and Vision, Chief Executive Officer. Valerie, a few words for our attendees, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And like Ebony and Alicia said, we had a wonderful night last night. I learned so much. It was a lot of fun as well, and I was really challenged. So partly about social media that I don't have much of, but how to do it well if I'm going to do it. And then my authentic self, really thinking of those 6 dimensions was awesome. Of course, I love Trinity Banks and Charles with the talking about our HEAL program. And last night, I really talked a lot about what we're doing with our outreach and education program in Chester County and the focus on Black and African American folks in that county for the last about 5 years now. And today I wanted to talk to you about why it's important that we do this work, not how we do it or how we started. Please review the video last night for that or look on our website. But first off, I want to say that the board of directors and myself, we welcome you today. We know that today on this beautiful sunny day as I look outside, that you could be somewhere else, but you're here. So we hope that you walk away from here, like Alicia said, all full and ready to give some of that good information that you're going to get to other people. So thank you for joining. Now, this outreach and education and HEAL initiative that we have that are really focused on people that are Black and African American, we need to keep doing this work. And I'll tell you why. I want to tell you about some of the stories of the people that I've met since we've been doing this for 5 years. First of all, our leaderboard that we put together of 9 people, primarily people of color, who brought the information to us about the difficulty it is to be a person of color and seek treatment that you might not know where it is, or you don't have the right insurance, or you're not feeling heard. Voice and Vision is about listening and having people feel heard. It's about sharing your voice, but about hearing and asking the next question so that we can serve people well. And the leaderboard really helped to help us identify what we need to do to start a program that would work and outreach to people of color. And then the people that we have on our team, amazing people. You're going to hear from 2 of them today. You heard from somebody yesterday. So that's Pastor Kevin Hunt, Reverend Robin Bearden Reed, Reverend Benjamin Nelson, Trinity Banks, and Dr. Kia Everett, who is no longer with us. She really helped us to develop the program as well. So I thank them all. It's really because of them and our advisory board that we're able to do this work. But when I was thinking back, I thought, we can't stop this work. In fact, it's got to be bigger, and it's got to be deeper, and it's got to be wider. I think of the senior citizen after I spoke at one church, and she came to me and said, my sister's not doing well. Would you talk to her? I said, sure. Connect me. So she connected us. And this elderly woman said, I want to die. I don't want to live anymore. And everybody at my church says, keep praying about it. Keep singing, keep reading the scriptures. She said, is there something wrong with my faith? I said, no, there's nothing wrong with your faith. It's professional help. And we hooked her up, and I followed her, and I still talk to her actually, and that was 2 years ago. And yes, she got help. She went inpatient for a while. She's getting therapy, and she doesn't want to die anymore. I think of the young mother after I got to speak at a church who came running up to me in tears at the resource table and said, I've just left an extremely abusive marriage. I have 2 kids. I don't know how to get help. And she was crying because she needed help so badly from the trauma of that abuse and just other things that happened even before the marriage. And I gave her the number of a therapist that I know because she wanted someone who was Christian. She needed someone she did not. She wanted, that's what she wanted. And I gave her someone that is a provider, a community care. And I saw her 2 months later at a different event. And she ran up to me, hugged me, so obviously before COVID, and said, oh my gosh, I'm doing so much better. Thank you, thank you. And then I think of the nurse that I saw actually speak at a meeting that I was at, who was crying about the people who are not getting the help they need for mental health. And she herself had such a heart to reach out to people in her own community of color to get the help. I think about another time I was in a meeting, and it was all about health, and it was all about wellness. And then later on in the year, I went to that church again, that fellowship again, actually, and a person grabbed a hold of me, and an hour and a half we stayed in the parking lot talking about his mental health challenges. When I said, have you shared this with many people here? Absolutely not, because he was ashamed to do so and didn't want people to know. Yes, I remember at the George Floyd protest in Coatesville, which I went to with Reverend Hunt and his family, and we walked, and I got to talk to 9 young adults informally. I just went over to youth and said, hey, we have this mental health and information and outreach and education program and addictions as well. And do you think that's needed? And she said, a young African-American woman said, mental health is as important to our community as racism. Then I'm also thinking about a friend of mine whose brother died of a heroin overdose because they just said, the family said to him with his bipolar disorder, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get a job, because they didn't understand mental health. And because sometimes the stigma or the lack of insurance or the lack of knowledge or the people around us don't know, or because we think things are quiet or we should keep things quiet, we just don't give people the resources or know how to give people resources. And I'll tell you, with our program, what we learned is you have to establish relationship. You have to build trust. People are not running to mental health and addiction substance use services. They're not in general running there. I had 2 weeks ago, I had someone text me that I met in this project and said, my cousin right now is having a mental health crisis. What's the crisis number in Chester County? And I was able to text that back. Now, this person knows how to search the internet and could have found that out. But guess what? They wanted a touch point, someone that would touch them, someone that would follow up, someone they had a relationship with. So it's really about building relationship. We can only help our Black and African American brothers and sisters if we listen, if we learn, if we have relationship, if we build trust. You know, I looked again this morning at the statistics because I used them before, but in the statistics that I saw online from the U.S. Census Bureau, the number 1 cause of death for young men, African American men, ages 1 to 19 is homicide, 2 is unintentional injuries, and 3 is suicide. For men 20 to 44, it's homicide is number 1 and suicide is number 4. Suicides don't have to happen. They don't. recovery is possible. We have to get the word out. Even homicides. I think of someone else I know whose family member got murdered, killed by someone because that person had an untreated mental health challenge. We have a lot of work to do. Voice and Vision needs to continue. We all are in this boat together, as I talked about yesterday, that we're all in a big boat, but we may not have the engine or we may not have the oars to row that boat. But you know what? We're providing you that at this conference. We're providing you a place to launch off of and figure out what to do next, how to do it. A few other things are on my heart, and that's helping people who are Black and African American get jobs in this field. Only 4% of psychologists in America are Black or African American. Only 4%. And we found in our study that people don't necessarily want to go to treatment because they don't see people that look like themselves. This is very important when we talk about culture, very important when we talk about helping people. Number one, outreach. Get out there and go to the streets. That's what we've done. You saw Reverend Ben in that opening video, out there in the streets. You saw John with the big blowhorn. We were in the streets telling people to come. We were knocking on doors. We were going to people's houses because we care about people. It's not about people coming to us. It's about going to people with the skills and the gifts that we have and the love that we share and a listening ear. So I'm so grateful that you joined us today. None of these things are about judgment. It's not about anybody's doing anything wrong. It's about how can we do more? How can we do things differently? How can we reach out? It's not about judgment. I don't judge anybody. I've been in mental health for 45 years. I have people in my own family that suffer. I have a child who's been arrested many times, but he was never arrested because of the color of his skin. He was never stopped on the sidewalk because he was Black or African American. He was arrested because he did things that he shouldn't have done. Our prisons have more people that are Black and African American than white. Abortions, more people that are Black than white. And why is that important? Because I've met people that have sorrow and grief from that, and they're not getting the mental health help for that sorrow and grief. So again, there's no judgment here. It's about help. It's about getting the word out. It's about creating forums where people can talk. It's about one-on-one and showing people you care and that you love and that you want things to be different. It's about helping people that have disparities, and we've seen it during COVID especially, but disparities around healthcare, and not just mental health and addictions or substance use, certainly. It's around physical health as well. So we all have a lot to do. I'm excited to be in this with other folks and with the team that we have. I'm excited to be at this conference. I learn from people. Everybody I sit in front of, I learn from, and I'm able to put something else in my toolbox. And I spent a lot of time in various countries in Africa, and I remember I would wake up in Kakuma in northern Kenya on our way to Sudan, and I heard the person say to me every morning, "Welcome to a new day." So I say to you today, welcome to a new day. It's a new day, a new time, and we're hitting a new year. So I'm excited that we're going to work together to make it different, make it better, make things more accessible for people who are Black and African American, for people that are my brothers and sisters that have a unique and diverse purpose. And I also want to thank you and honor you, because you know why? Because you brought spirituality as the forefront into mental health and substance use services. Yes, it's important. And so many times it's been pushed away, but you brought it into the forefront. So thank you for everyone attending. And if Voice and Vision can do anything for you, we're here for you. We are here, as you saw in the video. Please contact us. We'll hook you up with what you need. We'll listen. And believe it or not, we'll be on the streets so you can find us there. So thank you. Enjoy.
And we're back. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started with our day today. The conference hashtag, if you choose to exercise your right to using social media, is hashtag Voice and Vision Conf 2020. That's Voice and Vision, the ampersand sign, CONF 2020. We also invite you to utilize our question and answer area, which can be found at the bottom of your screen in the form of a speaker's bubble. While the chat room has been disabled for this conference, we welcome you to view it periodically to find helpful resources as well as information on how to locate our speakers. For more information about Voice and Vision, you can go to our website at www.voiceandvisioninc.org. The phone number is 1-800-734-5665 if help is needed. We also invite you to go to the website to download a copy of the new Help and Hope Guide on substance use, or to find out how to obtain a hard copy of our book. Understand that holistic health and help are cornerstones of recovery, and this includes spirituality. Happy Hanukkah to all our Jewish brothers and sisters. Hanukkah began yesterday. We wish you well. And next on our agenda are going to be a few shout outs. I'd like to first mention Reverend Robin Bearden Reed, Outreach and Education at Voice and Vision, Inc. She is also an ordained local elder and currently the supply pastor at Mount Sinai in Harrisburg. We don't want to welcome her and to acknowledge her remarkable work in the counties and beyond for Voice and Vision. I'd like to introduce next up to speak Pastor Kevin Hunt, Outreach and Education Regional Leader at Voice and Vision and the founding pastor of the Trinity United Baptist Church of Coatesville, PA. Pastor Hunt, welcome.
Yes, I'm glad to be here and to share with you the importance of what we're doing here at Voice and Vision. We welcome you because that is our ideology. That's our thought. That's our consideration, to welcome each and every one that we deal with. And that's what we call her, Ms. Val. She's a missionary. She's a loving person in heart. She's somebody that we can depend on consistently. Matter of fact, my relationship with her started because she came out and did outreach and showed that love that we all need. She's the one that brought me forth to share with me, some thoughts, considerations, and the vision of that which is occurring through Voice and Vision. So therefore, we are glad to have her as our leader, the same person that you heard last night, the same person that you heard right now, all right, is somebody that we can depend on, and she's consistent in those convictions. And she does provide that voice and vision. We're here to support that. And it's through that support that now I am empowered to go forth in Coatesville and to share some resources that there is help. There is help available. And that alone causes us to just rejoice and to know that there are other people who care. That's the biggest thing. When I walk into a barbershop or when I meet other people, that is the discovery. That's what's being shared on a consistent basis, that there is help. There is resources in Coatesville. A lot of times I'm getting to see people that I haven't seen for quite a while because of what I do. But this has allowed me to have a little bit more spunk, a little bit more meet and greet. And they're appreciative of the thought and the consideration of the likes of Voice and Vision. This has been an excellent conference. I don't know if you were a part of it yesterday, but I'm letting you know right now, it was truly a blessing.
Thank you, Pastor Hunt. I'd like to now introduce Reverend Benjamin Nelson, Men's Outreach and Education Leader at Voice and Vision, Inc. He is also the Assistant Pastor and Outreach Coordinator of Philadelphia Baptist Church. Welcome, Reverend Benjamin Nelson. Reverend Nelson is going to show us exactly how we can get up off of that thing.
Greatly. Good morning. Good morning. It's a beautiful morning. I'm glad that you all tuned in to be with us on this magnificent journey of discovery. I guarantee you that you're in for a treat this morning. The information presented will have a life-changing effect on our lives. Yes, it will. For we know that information is truly power. When I began inviting family and friends to this conference, I was posed with a question. What is that thing? And my response was, that's a good question. What is your thing? Immediately, I began to see them pondering in their mind as they were giving themselves a checkup from the neck up. Yes. Now, I ask you now, as people on this line right here, to ask yourself, what is your thing? What is your thing? Many people can easily identify other people's thing, especially those of us who are clinicians and those of us working in the human services arena, rightly so, because we are concerned about other people's things. But it is imperative that we first be able to identify and recognize our own things. Yes, I said things, because many of you know, if it's not one thing, it's another. That thing is anything that hinders your growth and development. That thing could be something mental, physical, or spiritual. Many of us suffer from one of all of these components. Some of us are bound by mental health challenges that put us in the mindset of I can't, while others are in denial, which, if not addressed, will impede our mental growth and development. Some are bound with physical challenges, which if not addressed, will hinder the quality of our life and our physical growth and development. Likewise, many suffer from spiritual bankruptcy, which has taken us down a rabbit hole of despair and depression and hopelessness, which will surely deter our spiritual growth and development. I implore each of us to open up our minds now, open up your mind, and receive this pertinent information, which will allow us to free ourselves from ourselves. Voice and Vision would like you to buckle down this morning. Buckle down this morning and join us on this fantastic journey of information, education, and inspiration. For where there's a voice, they shall hear. And where there's a vision, they shall see. So let's get up off of that thing this morning. Let's get up off that thing and listen and learn until we get better. Let us get up off of that thing and stay and pray until we get better. Let us get up off of that thing so that we can strive, thrive, and survive in the society we live in today. We must get up off of that thing. Now I'm gonna leave you with this. You can get with this, or you can get with that. But Voice and Vision is getting with this, because this is where it's at. Get up off of that thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Ben, for that rousing welcome and showing us exactly how passionate you are about getting up off of that thing. I'd like now to introduce Dr. Tim Barksdale, Senior Executive Director of Clinical Services for Marikey, Doctor of Clinical Psychology, Licensed Social Worker, and Adjunct Professor of Psychology. Dr. Tim, tell us, why are we so angry?
Well, hi, Alicia. How are you?
I'm well.
Well, good. Before I get started, I just want to thank you. You've done such an excellent job in moderating this whole thing. And I'm looking forward to your show. You've got to keep us posted. Before we get started, I just want to say to the audience, you selected this topic, you selected this course for a reason. So I'm getting ready to take you through an exercise, but I want you to be very mindful. So take the time, get something to drink, turn off your screens. You know, we all love to multitask, but then we lose important bits of information. So be here, and be present, okay? So I'm going to show you what to do, and then I'm going to take you all through it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a deep cleansing breath, not until I say start, a deep cleansing breath through your nose, and you're going to take it in at the count of 4. You're going to hold it, and you're going to let it out at the count of 4. My room's very sunny. You can see that it's coming through, but okay. All right, you guys ready? All
We're
right,
ready.
So I'm going to count to 4, and as I first start counting, you're taking in that breath through your nose. 2, 3, 4, and hold, and out. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So now you just did that. And when I talk about ways that we can manage our anger, you've already learned an important skill right there. You know, when you take in that air, it cools off the brain, it cools off the amygdala. It starts your processes of being able to focus, to be in a minute and in a moment. Okay, so I like to do points of connection. So I got to renew my connection real quick, and I'll be right here. Hold on for a minute. Okay, just lost connection for a minute. So points of connection. I am from Philadelphia, so there's Central High School. I graduated from Central High School. Went to Hampton University. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. Went on to grad school, so I've graduated from LaSalle and went to Immaculata and graduated from Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm a member of the African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas, and I'm on the board of Chosen 300 Homeless Outreach. I have to give them a shout because this is a time, every Saturday we're on the Parkway, we're feeding those who are in need, and the numbers are growing, you know, and too many of them look like us. So we have to continue to support our community. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself so you can have the context of this discussion, all right? You know, you heard my credentials, but, you know, getting here, you know, first thing I'd like to say is that I started out in South Carolina, my father was great to me, but he was an alcoholic and he was abusive. You know, he abused my mom. And I remember at the young age of 3, saying that if you don't stop hitting my mom, you know, I'm not going to speak to you again, and him being in tears as the police took him away. So we're starting to talk about a little bit of early trauma. But then I'll tell you about some myths when it comes to that. Well, let's keep going. So then we come back to Philadelphia, and I come from nice town, all over North Philly, you know, 36 in Allegheny, nice town, Huntington Park. But anyway, that's where I was raised. And we ended up with somebody my mom connected, my stepfather. He was a Vietnam vet. And he was physically abusive to me and my brother. My brother had cerebral palsy. And so the way we were disciplined was punched in the face. You know, for just minor infractions, for being too loud, for drinking the last of the milk, not finishing our homework, you know. So all of that kind of led up to me becoming what I call I'm a recovered angerholic, you know. When I got to school, I realized when I look back that I might have been fighting against that abuse because I used to get into fights all of the time, you know. And that I would have what's called blackout anger, you know. Now they call it road rage, they call it disassociation. But all I know is that when this would come over me, I would lunge towards someone and then go into, you know, some type of darkness. And when I looked around, I could see the destruction, whether it's I beat up someone, I destroyed the room. Luckily, I got stopped early off. Teacher took the time. She talked to me. She painted a picture of what my future would look like if I continued to react in this way. And, you know, when I went to college, I became a student of the mind. So started out as an educator, and then I would just go back to school every 10 years. I couldn't afford to go straight through, so every 5 to 10 years I'd go back to school until I ended up with a doctorate in psychology. But I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about myself. Last time I've had any type of rage like that was probably in college, and then that was it. It's a continuous effort, and it's something that you have to work on for yourself. I became a therapist. I ran anger groups for convicts. People who, in order to not go to jail, they had to take my course. And these would be, 12-week courses. And people would learn about the anger. And one of the things that I would teach them is that, your anger is not your strength. And I would just tell them, give me some examples of who you admired in jail. Who was the one who kept it, who stood out, amongst everyone else. And invariably they would say, that guy who he seemed to never lose his cool. He seemed to direct us and tell us what to do, but he never got angry. A lot of people think there's anger and strength, but one thing that I had to tell them, because to manage your anger, a lot of people think that you have to give up your power. And it's the opposite. You're actually giving away your power when you show anger. So, I'm so glad that in the beginning of this discussion, we had Valerie give all the stats, because that's what we're looking at. In this COVID pandemic, the murder rate was going down in Philadelphia, and now we're close to 500. I think the last count is 465 homicides. And she gave the stats in terms of how it's related to the Black community. Number one cause of death, is gun violence, and so far we've had 377 people killed by guns. That's not been all by Black people. But just think about it, 1,900 gunshot victims, and, violence, you can't say that anger is always the part of that, but it's usually, you'll tend to be cool and calm and relaxed and decide that you're going to shoot someone. So we really have to get a hold of it. So with that, I'm a professor. So I'm used to having my Blackboard, my PowerPoint, engaging students, the back and forth. So the fact that I can't see you, I've got to do some adjustment. So I'm going to ask Alicia to come back and let's just engage in a conversation. That's not my comfort zone, but I was taught as a therapist, that we have 2 ears and I'm sorry, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yes.
Because we're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. So I'm used to listening, but I'm going to try to talk. So what do you got for me, Alicia?
So, Dr. Barksdale,
Mm-hmm.
What are the reasons why Black people are so angry? And are we more angry than other cultural groups?
Okay. So to speak to why we're so angry, I'm going to ask the group to be involved. Like I said, I'm a professor. I like to have a back and forth. So in your chat boxes, I want you to just go ahead and type in some of the reasons why you get angry. Don't focus on other people. Just what are some of the reasons why you get angry? What are some of the things that cause you to be angry? Okay. And I'll answer the second part of that. Do we get angry more than other people? That's really a hard thing to answer, because you would think the answer would be yes, because we on a regular basis, we deal with a lot of injustice, a lot of racism, a lot of inequities, social inequities. But when you think about the sources of anger and from the research, a lot of times anger, it comes from a sense of entitlement, So in actuality, we are a very forgiving society. There's a greater chance now that someone who is white moves into our community and we're embraced before we move into somebody else's community and the things that we have to deal with. So there's been no research that finds that we have a tendency to be more angry than others. But it's hard to tell because we're also a group that doesn't go to therapy. We don't engage in the research that's been, and we're underrepresented. So, scientifically, we just don't know.
So Dr. Barstow, we actually have a couple of questions. We have a attendee who stated they get angry when people lie on them.
Okay.
Another says not feeling heard and being misunderstood used to make them angry. And yet another said mistreatment and betrayal. Can you speak to each of those individually?
Yeah.
And for our conference attendees, just so that you're familiar, the question and answer speaker box can be found at the lower menu of your screen. We have enabled the Q&A section and not the chat box.
Okay.
Dr. Barksdale?
Those were, being lied to, not feeling heard, mistreatment. Did I miss any?
What was the question again, Dr. Barksdale?
Oh, I'm saying, what were some of the things that were said? I got why.
Anger when people are, when we're lied on, not feeling heard or being misunderstood, as well as mistreatment and betrayal.
Okay. So I will put all of those in the category of psychological. All right. So I take as a psychologist, that 4% that Valerie mentioned. I look at things from a biopsychosocial approach. Okay. So, what's going on with that person, physiologically or medically, or what's going on with a person psychologically, or is there an environmental situational component? So all of these can all fall under the category of psychological. Okay. So, when people lie to you, you're feeling, or betrayal, what comes up in your mind is that people should treat me a certain way. And we have to kind of realize that when a person lashes out, and this time we're talking more about our anger, not their anger, but the ability to have empathy, and that may sound hard. This person has lied on me. Why am I going to put myself in their place? Well, what is the reason why this person has lied? Are there insecurities? Is this person having fear? I know that one of the tools that's helped me let go a lot of my anger is the ability to put myself in that person's place. What is the reason of that? When it comes to mistreatment, again, we can only control ourselves, and controlling ourselves also means where are we in that relationship, and so this mistreatment could be from work, it could be from a relationship that's more intimate, it could be from a family member. We have to evaluate each relationship, and we just have to decide, is this worth being in? Is it worth being involved in this relationship? And if so, then I need to do the work to stay in a relationship. Or if it's harmful, then I need to walk away. I need to protect myself. I need to surround myself with people who are not going to mistreat me. So you have to kind of look at each one. And when it comes to misunderstood, anger is all about missed opportunities when it comes to communication. Being able to have that one-on-one conversation, because there's lots of different types of anger, but the most productive kind of anger is that assertive anger. Okay, because so we're not saying that anger is wrong. It's all in how you use it. Okay, so if you use that anger to say, I need to tell this person exactly what the concern is, what I need for them to do, what am I willing to do, that's assertive anger. So we want to move from that point of aggression to having assertive anger. So let me just quickly identify the different types, because there's a lot of different types of anger.
That was going to be my next question to you, Dr. Barstow. If you could shed some light on the different types of anger to just bring us all to the same level of understanding.
Okay. So, some of us have behavioral anger. That's where we physically react, and it might be hitting someone, throwing things, breaking things. And so we have to deal with that in a way that we're actually taking that time. Remember, I showed you about that deep breath.
Yes.
Where you react is that you cool off the brain and that you're more mindful of how you're going through that. There's chronic and habitual anger. You know, some people have found that, you know, that I get what I want when I'm angry, you know, but that's only short term. Because after a while, remember I said, people are always evaluating, you know, is this relationship worth it? So people leaving and walking away from you. So yeah, so, you know, chronic and habitual anger, you're so used to reacting to everything, but we have to realize that anger is actually a mask. You know, it's covering up fear, it's covering up different forms of, you know, fear, anxiety, that's not all in the same thing, but maybe being depressed, you know, anger in itself, and we'll talk about that, but it's a mask. Judgmental anger, you know, if you're always saying, he should have done this, and you know what you need to do, you know, you have this, you know, moral superiority, you know, and you, it's my way or the highway. And you have to really examine that and recognize that unless you're able to compromise and unless you're able to show, again, empathy and put yourself in that person's place, then you're going to continue to push people away. There's overwhelmed anger. You know, so much is going on. You're feeling hopeless. You're feeling frustrated. You have low stress tolerance, you know. So the key to that is being able to ask for help, to delegate, you know, time management, those type of things. There's passive aggressive anger, you know, which really gets under the skin of all of us. You know, this is a person who you ask them, hey, you know, can you do this for me? And they go, oh, yeah, sure. You know, what happened to that favor? You know, they creatively forget, they avoid, they procrastinate. Again, a lot of times that comes from a person not being able to say, hey, I don't want to do that, or I can't do that, or I don't have the time to do it. Instead, they get angry and just avoid the situation. So they have to learn to be assertive and say what they can and what they can't do. A couple of others, you know, there's that retaliation, revenge, anger, you know, where you're always thinking that you were wronged and that you have to get even with someone. So some of those things you have to really, again, examine the situation and look at how you are addressing certain situations.
Is it safe to say, Dr. Barksdale, that one can vacillate between all those types of anger at any given time based on particular catalysts, both internal and external, I guess?
That's a good point. We're not everyone is going to react the same way. But we do, you know, sometimes when you look at your personality, you have a way of reacting to the world that's pretty steady. So you always have to examine that. You may have, you know, one or two, you know, I told you that there's 8. You may have 3 that you shift back and forth from. But the good thing about that is that it's less work, is if you can just kind of hone in a way that you show that type of anger.
We have a few others who have put in our chat box, excuse me, our question and answer area, what may be the triggers for them getting angry. One of our attendees mentioned seeing the abuse of women or children, other types of injustices in general. One that seems pretty, you know, probably something that most of us encounter on a routine basis is that when they put themselves out there for someone and the other person doesn't follow through on their part. So it seems like there's a general consensus about things that one as an individual doesn't have control over themselves, but they tend to be triggers. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, like I said, all of these fall into that psychological realm. So the solution is recognizing that you can only control yourself, and that evaluating, is this relationship worth it? Okay. And once you have that, sometimes you don't have a choice. If it's your child, you have to stick in there. So then you have to come up with different coping strategies, and it may be different forms of communication, you being assertive yourself, and not getting to the point of aggression, because we don't want any child abuse situations happening here. But yeah, and so everything that everyone's mentioned is psychological. What is interesting is that whenever I talk about this subject, people don't talk about the physiological things that might be going on with them. So, if you haven't gotten enough sleep, it's going to be hard for you to react to other people because you're going to be irritable. It's hard for you to kind of focus on the situation. You may be highly sensitive to certain things. So it's important to get enough sleep. You might have some type of injury or pain or illness. So you have to be mindful of your body and knowing that, okay, I am not up to dealing with what's going on. So now let me pull back. Other things that you might think about are your physiological things in terms of your needs. Are you hungry? Are you sexually frustrated? All of those are real things that can come about.
Dr. Barksdale, so we do have an attendee who mentioned we're so divided in this country. What are the conversation starters that you might suggest to bring warmth to a diverse group who may be engaging in a sensitive topic? And, in light of recent political and our pandemic even, those topics can come around quite frequently in this day and age. What are some of your thoughts on how to address things proactively without going down that rabbit hole?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not going to, go to a political stance, but just to say that we're so divided because of ignorance, and not ignorance in terms of the derogatory, but not knowing. Mm-hmm. We tend to hear what we want to hear and go towards that information source that's supporting that. Sometimes I will, so I can say I'm a Democrat, I'm liberal, but I want to hear both sides of the story. I want to know what's being said on the other side. So I will listen to a conservative radio station, and after my blood stops boiling, I try to say, okay, let me see what that position is. It's an economic position. Maybe it's not about racism. Maybe it's about, how my financial stable I am, and what are those concerns about that, and the other side needs to do that too. There was a point in time where our government worked well because they could reach across the aisle, try to figure out what each other's needs were, and things were done and things were accomplished. So, if you have a neighbor that you're not getting along with, it's sometimes, having that confidence, courage to say, hey, you know what? I'm having a problem with what's going on. Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you help me understand? Okay, so making that bridge.
Okay. And I have another question. What can help a person move into and become more empathetic? Since you mentioned empathy and that being something that we need to address within ourselves.
Okay. Well, I'm a person of religion, of faith. Okay, so when I'm talking about coping strategies, sometimes it's praying, and if you think about prayer, there's three parts of prayer. So you're praising God. So in doing that, you're becoming humble. And one of the things that I mentioned about anger is that you have that ego. So if you practice taking the ego out of it, and just saying, let me be open to hear and understand. And then there's expressing gratitude, thanks to God. So just being grateful for what you have puts you in a mindset so that you can be more open to listen to someone else, And there's other strategies, but when it comes to looking at the other person's side, a lot of that is having the courage to open that communication.
Okay. So that being said, do you think that anger is a form of mental illness?
Well,
when we have those deficits?
That's a good question. And you would think it was, and that's been a debate in psychology for a long time. Because, when you think about the other emotions, the extremes of those emotions are mental illness. So a person who is sad, the extreme of sad is depression. Even though a sad mood is only a portion of that, there's other criteria. But when you look at it all together, if that sadness is stopping you from maintaining a job, maintaining a relationship, interferes with your daily functioning, then it gets kicked up into depression.
Okay.
But anger, there is no diagnosis for anger. The closest thing is intermittent explosive disorder, which is just, it's not really a true form of anger, and it has something to do that can be modulated with medication, but not really with the phone. So no, it is not a form of mental illness. It is that go-to. When you think about Black men, we're taught that you can't cry, okay? That you're not supposed to whine, So the only thing that is socially acceptable is anger, So that's our go-to. If we're depressed, we're going to show anger. If we're scared, we're going to show anger because that's what's been accepted.
So can you speak on the boundaries that you can use to protect you from others who are angry and verbally abusive as a result? And that's a question from one of our attendees.
All right. Well, I just kind of go back to evaluating, looking at that relationship and saying, is it worth it? And if it's a family member, then, you have to use some of your own strategies. Sometimes it's, rather than getting to a back and forth, just stop talking, giving yourself a mental timeout or a physical timeout, walking away. Not allowing, if we see a pattern of subjects, there are families that won't talk politics, so it's a way of putting that boundary up. Deciding, choosing your battles. If you're always arguing about who's doing the laundry, if it's that important to you, go ahead and do the laundry, lose that battle, picking what's important to you. Having, one of the things when you look at the difference between the sexes, women have a tendency to talk it out. They'll go to someone, they'll have those conversations, whereas men may have it all bottled up and won't let it out. Plus, women use more words than men, so we don't even have the words sometimes to explain what's going on with us.
So I'd like for you to circle back on explaining, in your opinion, why Black people, or perceivably, it seems, Black people are more angry than others.
Some of it is cultural. We tend to be more expressive. If you look at the dominant race, they can be extremely angry, but they're smiling. You really, I see you moved my coffee cup, and next thing you know, you're demoted or something. They smile because they have the power. And we tend to be very expressive. Neck rolling and a lot of hand gestures, and that's why we're perceived to be more angry. But in reality, there may be less anger because we don't have as much a sense of entitlement. We don't think that we're owed as much. When you look at the country, we were very upset at the outcome of the election, but we weren't threatening to leave. And not leave the White House, you know what I'm saying? So there's that sense of entitlement.
The converse of that, do you think, is the fact that our anger could be also increased because we don't have that sense of entitlement? So while it seems that you're leaning towards our anger being different from others because we don't have the sense of entitlement? Could that also be the catalyst for us having anger?
Yeah.
Because we've been denied so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always tell people, you know, when I'll do an evaluation and I may say that someone needs to go into therapy. Okay. And the most effective form of therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. It teaches you to look at what your distorted thinking is. So the difference between us and Caucasians may be that what we're perceiving is not distorted, you know. So someone who's Caucasian may say, you know, everyone's against me, no one's trusting me. When you look at an African American and you're being followed around the store, you're not being paranoid. That is actually happening to you, you know. So there is a reason behind it. So I always try to connect African Americans to therapists who are of like, you know, it's important for us to see people that are like us. And that doesn't mean that everybody who's African American has to have a Black therapist. But you at least need to have someone who's culturally competent, who recognizes that when you're talking about being stopped on a regular basis, that you're not making this up, that this is your reality. When you're saying that your coworkers are treating you differently, that it may not be paranoid, that this may be a reality that you're having. Yeah.
Awesome. So you've expounded the spectrum on anger so well. Are there any general concerns outside of those that you've already mentioned with having anger? And what are some other things that we can do to manage? You gave us a really good tip in the beginning with the 4-second breaths. You mentioned therapy. Are there some other things that we can do to manage anger?
Yes, I mentioned, you know, talking to a friend, you know, having someone to talk to. You know, sometimes it's good to talk to a friend. Sometimes it's good to talk to someone who is completely objective, you know, and that's where we would tell you to go to a support group or go to a professional or go to your pastor. You know, someone, you know, I was a teacher, a professor at Lancaster Bible College, and I taught a lot of ministers that psychology and faith can go hand in hand, you know. So we have a lot of our ministers who are trained up now. You know, I'm so proud of Reverend Benjamin. He was my student. He recommended me for this conference. You know, so he learned some tips. He took my psychology courses. He understands, you know, the balance between faith and psychology. You always want to identify the problem, you know, so that you can do problem solving. Identify the feeling that you're going through. Look at what's the impact. You know, is this really something to get upset with? Or is this something that I can let go? You know, that's an important tool, forgiveness and letting go. And just being physically active, because the downside of anger is that it's connected to stress. And we know that stress can just do some real horrific things to the body, you know. It lowers our immunity. It interferes with our way to function on a daily basis. It causes heart attack and high blood pressure. So we want to be able to manage that. And a good way to manage that is to being physically fit, taking the time to take those walks, which not only keep you fit, but have you time to kind of process the things that go on with you. Relaxation techniques, whether it's meditation, breathing, prayer. Those are the things that help to calm you.
You have some wonderful suggestions. I'd like to ask our audience to use our question and answer field to just maybe express some of the ways that you decompress and help to minimize or alleviate your anger when you find those issues occur. And I will have Dr. Tim to respond to some of those to see how effective they are for you. Dr. Tim, do you have any other closing comments that you'd like to make about anger and tips that we could use, things that we could take away with today in order to help us strive to be more empathetic and to control our anger better manage it?
Well, I think one important thing is to monitor, and you can do that in certain ways. There's different apps you can look up that help you to kind of regulate your emotions. Just taking an old-fashioned journal, and some of the things that you want to take note of is, warning signs. How does my family members know when I'm getting angry? How do I know when I'm being angry? Because when you can pick up on those warning signs, then you can quickly start to say, okay, you know what, I'm starting to stutter, and I know that when I'm stuttering, I'm angry, so let me just stop talking and walk away. I'm starting to shake, or I'm starting to get loud. I'm trembling, all those kind of things, whether it's your physical reactions, your behavioral reactions, your verbal reactions, write those things down and then come up with a plan in terms of how you're going to address it when you start to have those.
Some of our attendees have mentioned some of those same coping strategies that you mentioned, journaling. Another has mentioned they love to write, but they also engage in walking. And one of our attendees has a question regarding meditation. Do you suggest meditation at all? And if so, what method of meditation do you most highly recommend?
Okay, so there's two things. There's meditation and there's mindfulness. Okay, and people will say that they're the same thing, but they're actually two very different things. Meditation is focusing on a thought or an object, and it helps you kind of escape the what's going on around you, and you can just kind of allow your body and your mind to relax. So yeah, I definitely recommend different forms of meditation. I mean, there's transcendental meditation. There's actual physical forms that kind of go with it. Like if you're doing yoga, there's different forms that'll help to relax the mind. But then there's mindfulness. And mindfulness is not escaping, but tuning into the present, okay? Focusing on your breathing, being very aware of your thoughts, being very aware of the sensations that you're experiencing, and just being in the present. That helps you to not only to help calm yourself, but being mindful it helps you to improve your relationships, to being focused and being right there with the people that you're talking to and that you're having relationships with. So mindfulness is a good strategy, and meditation.
Well, Dr. Barksdale, we thank you so much for all the information that you gave us on anger management, and just helping us to have a glimpse into the fact that our anger is not unwarranted and it's not unhealthy in all its forms. Thank you so much for allowing us your time. I also like to do a shout out because you are a fellow Central Lancer. I'm just finding out. What class did you graduate?
241.
And I was 252. So I look to you as a mentor. But I appreciate your time here today. And can you please just give our audience and our attendees some information on how they can contact you for more information and resources?
So I'm an executive director, so I'm not actively present seeing clients, but I do pick certain clients. I try to keep a caseload of about 5. So you can generally find me at tim.barksdale@mirti.org. Email me directly, and it's up on the screen. And I welcome the conversations, and if I can't help you, if I can't take you on, I'll definitely give you a nice referral base. As an executive director, I'm responsible for 5 different states, so I have a lot of resources.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Tim Barksdale. We appreciate your time once again. And as Dr. Barksdale mentioned, his contact information can be found on the flyers on your screen if you were to have any questions about resources. Dr. Barksdale, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to Voice and Vision.
So we're going to switch things up just a little bit today. We're going to put a plot twist on our conference. We're going to show a 15-minute film, short film called Disorder. The director, Carolyn Robinson, is a writer, director, producer, and marketer, and is committed to telling meaningful stories. She will be accompanied by actress, director, producer, and acting instructor, Yvette Gagne, who plays the mother in Disorder. So Disorder is about after the death of her mega pastor father, successful corporate attorney Dahlia White just wants to move on to bigger and better things, but her uber religious family won't allow her to forget. As she attempts to develop a promising new relationship with neighbor Sean, baggage from the past threatens to haunt her future. I'd like to welcome at this time director Carolyn Robinson, as well as Yvette Gagne. Ladies, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi, how are you both? You look beautiful.
Thank you, so do you.
Thank you. So, Carolyn, I'd like to start with you. What inspired you to create this film?
I think at the time, so this is a semi-personal story. When I was 6 years old, my grandfather took his own life, and the family never talked about it. And as part of kind of storytelling, I really wanted to, and at the time, and now, like, you know, mental health and the stigma of mental health in the Black community is such a thing. I really wanted to encourage people to seek resources, seek assistance, and just cry out for help if they need it. So I decided to write this. This was very much a healing journey for me. And I just wanted to touch one person, just one person. And that would have made all the difference in the world to me.
And that means so much. And we thank you for your transparency and sharing the inspiration for the film. So Disorder is based off a true story. Did you find that the turns in the story affected you equally personally?
Yes, it's loosely based. So the family structure is a little different. There's some, but it is loosely based. Yes. As part of it, it was very much a healing journey. It was very cathartic. And then the other thing that was important was that in many cases, you know, we live within a familial structure that doesn't really acknowledge the need for help. You know, I come from a working class Caribbean family where no matter what happens, you just keep working and you just keep pushing forward and you don't talk about it. And so I wanted to sort of show a situation where all family members weren't necessarily open, or perhaps had different views, or maybe were super religious and didn't acknowledge the need for discussion around health and healing. So I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does, in various ways. So overall, what would you like the viewers to take away from the film? You mentioned that if you could just touch one person, are there key points in particular that you like a take-home message for those who are viewing the film they're about to see?
Just don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't feel confined by either a familial or social situation, which may not be open to that.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company?
Oh, sure. So I have a production company where I create, produce, and distribute content. It is primarily focused on marginalized groups and women. So some of the stories we did a great series this year, a transgender story set in New Orleans. We've done, just amazing work. Just finished a pandemic project, and also do a lot of work for brands. So content for, folks like Shea Moisture and Vice and, Facebook. So it's been amazing kind of standing up a company. I wanted to be a storyteller, but I quickly realized that I need to own my own IP, right? And I need to manage my own journey. So I need to know the business of content creation as well. And so that's how the company came about.
Can you speak to how others can, in following your journey, can find avoidances to certain pitfalls. You mentioned, you have to know your own IP. Are there some other things that people should keep in mind when trying to embark on a similar journey for themselves?
A similar business journey or a similar kind of production journey?
Actually, both.
Yeah, I just fundamentally think that, if you have an idea, you need to, so there's your idea, and then there's the business of your idea, right? So, what does that look like? What do you own? What's your long-term plan? Do you want to continue to, operate as a standalone business? Do you want to get acquired? And so I think kind of thinking about the business of it will help you greatly in kind of bringing that idea to fruition. That's a whole nother seminar, to be honest.
I know. I can tell you're full of information that we all want to get out of you right now in this moment. So we'll have to save that for a later time. I'm going to circle back to the actress in your film, Yvette Gagne, once we viewed the content. So just for our viewers at this time, just know that what you're about to see is a project that has heartstrings attached from director Carolyn Robinson called Disorder. It does address some sensitive content such as suicide and the aftermath of such. For resources on suicide prevention, you may see a flyer that'll post across the screen for the suicide prevention hotline if you need it at any time or know someone who does. And now I'd like to bring to you the short film, Disorder. Wow. Let's just say that was extremely powerful, extremely powerful. Kudos to you, Carolyn, and to Yvette. We were, our eyes were opened to a lot. I'm just going to give everyone a brief moment to be able to process what they were just witness to. Again, the suicide prevention contact information can be found on your screens. If you'd like to share that with anyone or need assistance yourself. And ladies, we're back. Just want to continue the discussion with Yvette. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey in this process, in this project?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for holding this conference, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it, and really grateful to have been a part of this film project and to have met Carolyn, who I love and adore, and really appreciate her vision and the hard work and her story. And I came to this project because I did some work with a couple of the producers. One of the producers lives in my building. I live in a building with a lot of artists here in Brooklyn, New York.
Nice.
And she brought me to the project, and I auditioned for it, and we had a table read, and I met Carolyn, and was so attracted to her vision and to her as a person and her light and her spirit. And when they offered me the role, I was like, yay, I'm so excited. And so that's how I came to the project, just as an actor, auditioning and getting a part.
And speaking of your role in this film, what is your perspective in playing a mom dealing with losing her husband and not knowing your daughter in the movie was going through such a severe emotional breakdown?
Yeah, I don't think my character was very comfortable with options of actually dealing with grief and the process outside of her religious experiences. And I do believe that at the time of my husband's death, it was up to my character to make a decision to carry on his legacy with the church. And I think that my character poured all of herself into upholding the church, keeping the church going. And that became much more important than her own grief and really recognizing what was going on with her daughter at that time.
Now, it was such a moving role that you played and emotionally drawing. What did you use for inspiration? And did you find it difficult to come in and out of that inspiration for the sake of maintaining Yvette, the personal actress, instructor, director, writer yourself, to the role that you were playing and trying to display with authenticity?
Well, as an actor, I do draw from my own emotional well and some of my own experiences and try to bring that to the role and to the character, and staying open emotionally for what might happen, and playing the role as written with the intentions that the writer and director has provided the roadmap to the life and needs and wants of the character. And after that, connecting with my fellow actors, we just connect and we let it rip. I come to this as an artist, and I feel like the artistry is a collaboration, and a huge part of it is having an instrument, meaning me, myself, my physical, my mental, my emotional connection to myself and the environment and the work and my fellow actors is palpable, is viable, is there, it's present. And we go into a zone. And sometimes, actors walk around sets and we're in the zone, and, hopefully people understand that it's not personal, that we're just trying to connect to this work. But when you have a really well-written script and story and a group of people that you believe in, but really a well-written script, let me stick with the craft because I really think this script was amazing and really well crafted and developed and personal. So I felt that as an actor.
Go ahead, absolutely. I was going to ask you the same question, Carolyn.
Well, so Yvette and I met, we actually met in the lobby, right, of your building. And I think we met on Halloween, right? So you were dressed up and I was just, so we just randomly.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so when Crystal, the producer on this project, said, hey, maybe we should ask Yvette to come in and audition for the role, I want to tell you that Yvette was the only one to come in, and she was dressed the part.
Wow.
Dressed the part, and she even greeted me, like she gave me this regal nod, like she was already a pastor's wife. She was already inhabiting the role. And so, there are people that act and there are people that transform. Yvette transforms. She knows how to inhabit a role. Mm-hmm. And she's just, such a, she has a theater background, and she came prepared for the part and just smoked everyone. And and there was no question that she was the perfect person for the role.
Well, I have a question. Well, first of all, has this film been yet released to the general public? And even in its current form, what has been the feedback that both you ladies have received, both Carolyn for your role as the director and writer of content, as well as Yvette for your role as a portrayer of such a powerful image within the content?
You first, Carolyn.
So when I did this, I sort of went through my process, my emotional and psychological process while I was writing it and making it. So by the time it sort of was released, I had kind of, in a way, almost resolved it in my head. And so I was really shocked. I was almost shocked by some of the reactions I was getting. You know what I mean? Like by people reacting so strongly. I did a panel once, and at the close of it, one of the panelists was crying. It's just, so I'm sort of like, really? But then I kind of already went through it. So it went through a festival process, and then it was also taken on tour by a nonprofit. And we did some stuff around World Mental Health Day. So it really has become like a great speaking and teaching tool around, mental health and healing. And then currently, because I am also a business, so I actually distributed the film. So it's actually on Prime Video. So if you're on Prime Video, you can watch it for free. And then it's on another streaming platform called Kweli, KWELI.TV, which is actually the only streaming platform owned by a Black woman.
Nice.
Yes.
Could you give the spelling of that for our audience, for our attendees again, please?
KWELI.TV.
Nice, thank you. And
because
you have that information available for them as well.
Yes, because as part of this, I wanted to be very lean heavily into women-owned businesses and female creatives, and also people of color. So this project is predominantly led by women and Black women. Our cinematographer is from Vietnam, right? So women of color. So it's probably about an 85% kind of women and diverse-led production.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And Yvette, you were going to give us some insight as to the feedback that you've received in portraying the role of the mother of and spouse of someone who was a victim to suicide. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, the feedback that I've gotten, has been from people who are really close to the film. Mm-hmm. I haven't sat in the audience and watched it with people. The feedback I've received has been from the producers and fellow actors and Carolyn. But I have to say, this is the first time that I'm actually this up and close and personal with the film and discussing it and being part of, a platform to be able to talk about the film. And I'm actually the kind of actor, once I do a project, a film project, I let it go, mm-hmm. Unless it's required of me to talk about it and come on a platform like this. So revisiting it again after not having seen it for a while is refreshing to me. I always learn from myself and from my fellow actors, how I portray a character and what I do on screen and how I can improve what it is that I do and what I like and what I can improve on. As Carolyn explained, most of my background is theater, and most of my experience is theater. So I don't see myself as a novice actor on film and TV. I'm currently on a television show, but there's technique and there's certain things about film and TV that I may not have as much experience in, and so I kind of shy away from even watching myself sometimes on camera. Yeah. I think I told Caroline this. She was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, girl." I don't like watching myself, so and I kind of shared that with other actors. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, so
humility. Yeah. It sounds like humility. It really does.
Well, thank you. Or fear.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You ladies appear to be fearless to us, and we appreciate you. We do have a few questions from our attendees. In part, in viewing the film, attendees mentioning that they heard it was stated that the pastor had an aneurysm, a sudden aneurysm, and they wanted to know if that was used as a cover-up for the suicide. And I think that brings to point a larger issue, which is when we are dealing with mental health, wellness, or illness, how, that stigma may kind of cause us to call things what they're not or avoid them altogether. Could both of you ladies speak more into that? And we'll speak to Carolyn first.
Yeah, the answer is yes. That was used as a cover up for optics' sake. And yeah, I did want to explore the fact that sometimes we live within families that don't often want to address the difficult issues and don't want to, talk about it. And because of that, I think many of us, including myself, have had to deal with trauma, right? That is kind of either imprinted on our DNAs or that we've been exposed to because no one talks about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I've had to sort of, oftentimes we have to self-resolve or resolve our own trauma because it was never discussed.
Nice. Yvette, do you have something you'd like to add with that on that same topic about the avoidance property or wanting to hide or shy away from calling things what they really are in mental illness, mental wellness?
Yes, I think that it's there's a lot of generational issues within families and that we don't talk about, and which causes a deeper level of the illness, whether it's depression, anxiety, which leads to other forms of mental illness. But I think that the one of the most important parts of this character that I experienced was the level of denial that she had, and that wall, that defense mechanism, and because of the stigma and not really being able to deal honestly, emotionally, and not being equipped for that, caused a deeper level of this mental illness within her daughter. We were the type of family to actually talk about. Wow, I'm actually getting emotional right now.
And that's fine. Thank you for your transparency.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, I'm actually getting emotional right now because within my own life, my own story, I have experienced some of the things that are dealt with in the film. And as much as I desire to be a professional and be an actor and reach successes and, have, a beautiful life, at the end of the day, there are some things that need to be taken care of in order to really fully embrace life. And one of those things for me is actually to go into therapy and deal with those issues that were never talked about, that stayed within me, and I needed to be able to break free of those things. And so I'm just like, really grateful that I'm here to be able to talk about it, because it really didn't have to be this way. Could have turned out a lot differently. You called me strong, thank you for that. I believe my strength comes from working with other people, like-minded people. And I believe it comes from, from God, my spiritual connection, and so I'm grateful for all of it, for the whole thing.
Well, we are definitely blessed by your sharing. Are there any upcoming projects? You mentioned that you are also part of a television show. Is it New Amsterdam? Because you look a little familiar.
Yes, it is New Amsterdam. I just shot an episode on Wednesday. Okay. And then I will go back next Wednesday and shoot another it's part of the same episode. So I'm shooting again next week. I play Nurse Linda Weber. And
shout out to the nurses.
Shout out to the nurses. And I do think that they're going to be giving the nurses a lot more because it's a medical show, medical drama, and how essential the nurses are on the front line of the pandemic. How could they not? How could they not? Right?
They would be remiss.
They would, and I'm feeling it. I'm manifesting it. I'm like, yes. That's why I feel like, oh, so they're calling you again and again and again. So I kind of think they're building up to something bigger and better for Nurse Linda Weber. And I just finished teaching at NYU undergrad. Just finished our semester yesterday. That completed yesterday, and I'm also writing. So those are my present projects.
Thank you so very much. And Carolyn, I'm just reading some more comments from our attendees, and one has mentioned that the film definitely gave them a better understanding of some personal challenges within their own family. So we take that as a nod to the thoughtfulness and strength that you put behind telling the story and bringing it to so many. You are indeed accomplishing what you intended, which is to touch even one person and to allow them the opportunity to kind of see a mirror, a reflection of some things that they themselves may have encountered and or have had experience with either directly or indirectly with people that they know. Ladies, do we have any parting remarks? And we'll start with Carolyn.
Sure. Thank you for having me. This is an amazing conference. I would just say it took me some time. It took time for me to find kind of my light and my path to healing. And and the way that started is I had to admit, right, that I had, that I had unresolved trauma. And, I'm not sure if anyone fully ever heals from trauma, but what I did need to find out is how does trauma impact how I operate in my life today? How do I react to things? What are my triggers? And so I have to recognize those things. And, when I feel them kind of happening, I know what it is. So it just requires for me a very high degree of self-awareness.
Yes.
An understanding of who I am, as a person, and what's my good and my bad. And I'm always going to keep working on it. But I can truly say it's never too late to find, healing, to find, light, and, to kind of find purpose and self-actualization. It is never too late.
Absolutely. We thank you for that. Same question for you, Yvette.
Oh, absolutely. Ditto. Everything that Carolyn just said applies to me as well. I totally connect to everything, and that's been my process as well. I also want to say that for me, the arts, being part of the arts at an early age, dancing, singing, acting, shows, painting. I did a lot of that when I was a kid. And I really believe that being a part of the arts gave me a voice, right, where I didn't have one before. And it really allowed me to open up. It saved me. And to the point where I could actually see how it played a huge part in my life and becoming a whole human being in this process, So, so I'm just grateful for being an actor, being in the arts, and having that as part of my process too.
Awesome. Ladies, we thank you both for your strength, your courage, and your wisdom and ingenuity, dare I say, in bringing such powerful content to us today. The film was very moving. It was extremely powerful and very eye-opening. And on a parting note, you both mentioned about, recognizing your triggers as well as wholeness, and the fact that, while the family portrayed in the film tend to lean a little bit more towards prayer than other resources that may have been available, the fact that we all have to treat ourselves as a whole person. And we thank you for giving us the courage and the tools to do so. Thank you so very much. Can we please have each of you give us information on how we can contact you, even though your flyer is also present on the screen for our attendees. If you could just speak to any additional means of contact, that'd be great.
Sure. My IG handle is on the post, so you can DM me. Want to discuss further, or if you have any questions, and I always respond. So.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. The IG there is a good place to reach out to me. Also, I'm also on Facebook as Yvette Gagne, and you can inbox me that way or DM me right there. And I always respond as well.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you again. We appreciate you. Thank you for sharing and opening up just a little bit of yourselves to us. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
For all of our attendees, the title of the film is Disorder. That's Disordher. You can find the content on the Amazon Prime Video. Next up is a gentleman who has had a wealth of experience and expertise that we're going to bring him on to share today. Kali Younger is an entrepreneur, life coach, mental health advocate, and he'll be speaking on our conference about that thing. I'd like to bring Kali Younger onto our webcast.
Hi, Alicia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you for asking. So, Kali, I want you to tell us all about, a little bit about yourself and what is that thing?
So that thing I described as part of this conference is trauma, right? How do we get off of that trauma, that past generational trauma? How do we hold ourselves accountable, yet have empathy and compassion for ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't necessarily our fault, but it is our responsibility now, right? And so that's where I come from, a place of trying to sort of sort these things out of trauma. And I also advocate strongly for therapy, talk therapy for Black men. So that is that thing.
So tell me how you got started. Can you give us a little insight into your background and tell us who is Kali Younger?
Absolutely.
What's your journey?
Yeah, so my journey started, I'm a kid from North Philadelphia. I grew up in the streets of North Philadelphia, grew up from a really big family. My mother had 10 siblings. And so they had a wealth of grandchildren and cousins. And so I grew up in that kind of environment, big family. And I only mention that to say, when you're in a large family, you can kind of lose who you are, right? You become part of this big organism and you kind of lose who you are. So fast forward many years later, through living through the streets and being in the streets and involved in many things, I finally landed myself into prison for an armed robbery. And I found myself there, and it was an awakening moment for me. And I found myself trying to figure out again, as I mentioned, who am I, and what do I bring to this? So went to prison, spent 5 years there, came home, and while I was in prison, I put together a plan or strategy to come out and try to serve my community to the best that I could. And one of the ways, I went to a prison called Laurel Hollins, which was way up in the mountains, but it's really a prison for older lifer prisoners. And my job was to help and sort of be like a CNA to those lifers. And so I did that for many years. And because of that, I came home with this passion for nursing and seeing myself trying to make my life better while also helping others and serving my community as well as the world. And so I got my first environmental service job at Abington Hospital. And from there, as an environmental service worker, I moved my way through to becoming an OR orderly is what they called it, which was just an environmental service worker in the OR. And decided to go back to school, went to HR, asked them exactly what could I do to further my career with a felony. And they told me I could possibly go to nursing school. There's no guarantee you get a license, but you could try anyway. And so that's what I found myself doing, at least giving myself that shot. Went and got my license and became a licensed nurse. And along the way, I've learned a lot of things growing up and serving others. My passion was to serve others in nursing. And then I sort of hit this brick wall where I realized you have to take care of yourself as well. And so that was my first, actually, it feels as though while I was going through nursing school and trying to achieve all these things, I was being resilient in a way where I was really sort of suppressing all of that past trauma because I was on my path to achievement. And so finally, that combination of taking care of others on a full-time basis and not taking care of myself many times led me to seek out talk therapy. I got into therapy, and it was amazing. It worked wonders for me. And I got to start to process that trauma and what happened to me, and, those things along the way that I just decided to put out of my head. Your mic is off.
Thank you. So that being said, What did you identify as your thing, and what advice can you give the audience on how to change the narrative? Because it seems you've done so much to change the narrative of your own.
I think my biggest thing was fear, right? I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and for much of my life, I was taught to not necessarily fear, but to fear that moving forward or doing something outside of God's work, as my parents had it planned for me, that I had no other options for myself. So once I got out into the world and I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness, I was excommunicated from that. Once I got out into the world, I didn't know exactly what it is or who I was. And so that thing was that trauma from not knowing who I was and fearing that I could do anything. So it took for me to realize that those tools that we often look for from God was actually in me, right? And I had to cultivate those tools. It wasn't as if I was going to come and get rescued, or the kingdom of God was coming to save me, but I had to actually do the work. And so I was actually fearful of, I thought that for so much, and growing up as a African-American in the inner city, you kind of get inundated with all these messages of who you should be and who you can't be. And, by the time you get to adulthood, you find yourself fearful of the things that you could possibly be. And so for me, it was getting over that fear and processing the fear of, this is up to me. I can do this. You have to put the work in. And that's pretty much what I did.
So you spoke about your prison experience. Can you tell us a little bit about how that shaped you? And in particular, were there resources available to you while undergoing that time in your life that you leaned toward to help to give you that strength to overcome the fear that you were trying to overcome?
So it's interesting, it's interesting. You get into nursing and it's such a caring field, and then you realize that there aren't many resources even to take care of nurses, right?
Yes.
And so there was no resources within the organizations. It seemed like the hospitals is just, kind of moving and going and take care of the next patient. Here's this, forget what's going on with you. And so it was nothing, there weren't much support from the organization side. And then I looked outside and, it was, where do you start? Like, you Google a therapist and what does it look like? So I had no way of finding out what it looks like, where this process starts. But thankfully my wife took over and she sought out the help and kind of connected me with someone and pulled it all together. And I was stubborn as a mule going the first time. But after going, I started to see, listen, I just started to sit there and talk and hear myself and start to hear myself accountable. And it was like, oh, wait, light bulb, this is all me. And one of the things, I was getting into my career and really focus on just me and my achievements that I forgot a lot of family, right? And over those years, I started to feel as though I was isolated. And talking through therapy, one thing I realized, the isolation that I was going through was caused by me, right? It was me and my perspective of no one's calling me, no one's checking up on me, no one loves me, because that was my perspective of things. But then I realized that through talking it through is you're only as lonely as you make yourself feel. And that's when reaching out to others and family members and telling them about my experiences in therapy has worked wonders. And I feel as though I've grown a family immensely by just having that change in perspective, you know?
Mm-hmm. So what do you do now? Where are you in your career as a nurse and some of the other titles that we mentioned to our attendees you hold at this time?
So I am currently a pediatric nurse at a local hospital, and I am currently working on my MHA, which is a Master's in Healthcare Administration. I'm currently a grad student at Penn State, and going through my grad school work, I'm learning more of how to study systems, right? So I'm studying the systems as they relate to how they affect us, where the breakdowns are. And so I've gained immense insight on that. And one of the reasons I went into that is one of my first jobs as a nurse was a nurse at a mental health hospital.
Okay.
And the mental health field was when I got there as a young nurse, you know, I'm going in, I'm going to change the world. And it was like, wow, what is this? I mean, there were literally no resources. And even the institutions started to look like the prisons that I used to be in, right? So it was like, how can anyone heal in institutions that look like actual prisons? And in many times, and in many cases, these institutions actually produce and pass on these children right on to the next incarceration. And then they learn to live that way, right? Like someone's feeding you 3 meals a day, someone's telling you when to get up, get dressed, all the things that carry on from a parent, not actually teaching people life skills and how to take care of themselves and all the necessary things they need to be resilient to move on, but instead just treating. I saw a lot of treating trauma with drugs. And so that really started to pull at me. And I thought to myself, I have to find a way to start to not only be a part of the system and just, you know, take my job as it is, but I need to actually, if I'm going to have any kind of conscience, I need to actually start to fix these problems.
Can you speak a little bit as to what you've done thus far to help to address those issues and those deficits?
So right now, currently, I'm working as a mentor to several young men. So I work as a personal mentor and life coach with those young men, trying to teach them some of the lessons I went through while going through jail, and some of those traps, so to speak, because as I was going through jail, one of the things I noticed is that there are industries built around me, right? Like there are people and process who benefit from me a little bit. I like to look at it as sending one of those trees through one of those choppers, and everyone gets a little bit of peace, right? And they set up systems. And one of the things I noticed too, like all of the prisons I was in were in these little small farm towns or rural communities, or where it used to be steel country.
Yes.
And these prisons were built there to rebuild that design. So you need people to actually come, right? So there's a motive to get people in there. So many of the things I try to teach these young men are like, it's not necessarily someone out there stalking and haunting and hoping we go to prison, but instead these systems were set up in such a way to keep us turning within them. And so we have to, it is not our fault, but it's our responsibility to navigate them, right? And so part of my job is to try to help them navigate those things through my experience. The other thing I'm currently looking to do is to partner with local barbershops and start to get some of our barbershops peer specialists certified, so where they can take in different different issues through members and be a resource, right? So they don't have to go through their wives or whatever the case may be if they struggle, or if your wife doesn't necessarily know therapy, maybe there's another resource. And the barbershop seems like a great idea to me, somewhere we frequent a lot, somewhere we meet up and talk. But sometimes we don't always have all the information to give out to our clients. And so I want to help barbers get that information and resources so that they can better serve their community in a way I'm sure they want to. So we're working and partnering with that and trying to move that forward right now.
So can you speak a little bit more about how you think would be the most effective way to start dismantling some of those systems, that add that additional pressure, that way, that sense of individuals feeling like they don't have anywhere to go or a way to get out, or, how do we dismantle those systems?
Right. So if I'm speaking honest, the way I see everything is not the way I see it, but the way the world sees it and science sees it, men or women are both physical and psychological or spiritual. And so right now, I don't think we pay enough attention to the psychological war or psychological attacks we're under, right? And that even starts from the very beginning, from our nurturers, right? And some of the things that we take in and some of the behaviors we take in from our nurturers. So I think part of dismantling some of these systems is getting a lot of awareness around how we're raising our young men, right? I think it's going to take a lot of force to start to help our young men to see that it's okay to not only compete, but also to cooperate. I think that's a center problem. And so, again, I think the attacks are on two sides. One side, it's internal, and some of these messages we take in from our own environment, and we have to start to define those things, right? First and foremost, identify them, then define them and give them a name. And then we can start to measure to these things and start to see if we can reduce some of this trauma that's coming through our media, coming through our raps, coming through our images. And then as well as start to challenge some of these organizations and their responsibilities to the mental health and well-being, right? A lot now you see is a lot of taglines around diversity and inclusion, but I'm not seeing that same force and momentum really to get out. Because, for example, diversity and inclusion, we can have all the taglines you want, but for nurses, example, many of the nurses, right, we get trained from other fellow nurses.
Yes.
And so if those other fellow nurses are white counterparts who aren't necessarily, and I'm not saying, I don't know if anyone's racist, but I know if you're not comfortable with me and comfortable training me, it's likely that I won't get the proper training if the organization doesn't put the force into that, right? And so what I see is a lot of our young men and women in nursing getting left behind because of that training, and organizations coming up with taglines, but not necessarily seeing the training and those opportunities through. Because we know this isn't about intelligence, but it's about exposure, right? Yeah. And how often we get exposed to these opportunities and given these opportunities, and not only given the opportunities, but given the opportunity to fail, which I really don't call failure, but I call learn, right? Mm-hmm. So we given these opportunities to just learn, make mistakes, do it again, without feeling that pressure of, oh man, I could be thrown out because this has been given based on my intelligence, right? Because we've bought into this thing that it's all about intelligence, and it's not, right? So absolutely. I think it's dismantling that, if I can answer to you the other part, the internal and nature part. And then I think we've flipped leadership on its head and what it means to be a leader. I see a lot of leaders by privilege. Next man up. I was a subject matter expert, so someone told me I should go ahead and be the lead, right? But that isn't the skills. Those technical skills aren't the skills of a leader. Some of the skills of a leader are empathy and compassion, discernment, honesty, transparency, vulnerability, right? Some of the things we actually don't see from our leaders. Instead, we see them just managing process and getting away with calling themselves leaders. So I think it's also not only holding our leaders accountable, but helping them to identify what those values are, because many of them just don't know. It's not necessarily that they're trying to just manage the process, but they don't know. And a lot of people are trying to protect their job and just trying to do the best that they can every day to get back to their families. But I don't think that's enough. I think we really have to challenge ourselves, be uncomfortable, and try to move forward and really do the right things.
And, you spoke to leadership, which I'm extremely passionate about myself. As a matter of fact, just in the conversation with our event producer, we were speaking about, we were just speaking about the other day, and I too am a nurse, and the importance of having mentorship and education and leadership that mirror yourself can shift that, make that shift, make that change, help to dismantle those systems on so many other levels as well. I think you spoke to it perfectly, where in our field in particular, we are mentored and are engaged and taught by people who hold the title as ourselves, but they don't necessarily look like us. And there can be a disconnect where that's concerned. Can you speak to how leadership, the lack thereof, or the road that you had to take to find adequate leadership has shaped you?
So I think leadership, in my opinion, really starts with adversity and stripping away the ego, right? Like you have to have some adversity life experience. It's just not, you have to, in the military, you don't become a leader or a 5-star general by just signing up, right? Like you just don't pass on. You have to go through some wars, some adversity and some tough times, react, respond. And so I think through my journey, one part of my journey in becoming a leader is stripping away my ego, and marriage will help you do that, right? And you have to find your you have to find your leadership skills there, and you realize it's not just about forcing the things that you want to do, right? Like pushing your vision on another individual. Is about really taking all things into consideration, and sometimes it's about pivoting, right, and changing direction, doing different things. And like I said, sometimes from a nursing standpoint, you see people just going through the process. This is, if A said, if I see this, then the answer should be, I should do this. And it's like, sometimes it takes that consideration. And I can almost see people blindly not even understanding exactly how to even think outside of that. So a lot of, and I think much of that is because their own control and fear, right? And so that's where I speak of the ego and understanding and breaking some of that down and really trying to identify those things. I think through all of my adversity, I think I've done that, right? Like, I think what I've noticed going to Penn State and studying in grad school, I've spent an enormous amount of money, and I'm finding out that the skills to be a leader I've developed through my adversity, right? And stripping away that ego and starting to understand how to connect with people and really trying to not have people follow me, but how do I set people free, right? So that they can then set off that ripple effect to take their vision and expand and do better. So again, leadership isn't about controlling the environment and controlling the process, but how do we find the best in other people and try to set them free? And I think through some of my adversity, I realized, and you go through an institution and a system like the criminal justice system, you realize how many people just show up to work every day, right? When you need them to show up with a little bit of compassion and empathy for another human being. And just seeing the world from that perspective gives me a broader perspective, right? I see people protecting what they have, and it's like that fear of protecting what you have is also what causes the trauma and evil in the world.
So I have a question for you. So you speak to identifying the fear within and finding ways to combat that, and what you just described sounds like being forged by fire. How did you not allow the prison system and that time in your life to be, your dash, you know what I mean? Like be the thing that you like overwhelm you or overcome you or derail you from those things that you ultimately achieved. How can you give some inspiration to our attendees as to how that snafu or that portion of your life did not define your life?
Right. So like I mentioned, I come from a family that was really big and you can get lost in it. So I've always been sort of, and speak to my family, I've always been the kind of kid who my voice needs to be heard, right? I need to be heard. I need to be seen. It's always really been important to me. And I think one of the things we don't watch a lot is the world can start to define us. The word felony was meant to define me, right? And I realized that if that label was on me and people start to treat me like a felon or a criminal, I can internalize that, right? And start behaving that way. One of the things that I see all the time is working out, being a bigger man, especially in the OR and being physically in shape. A lot of people touch on me and put their projections of who I'm supposed to be on me, right? And I can internalize that and become, the sexual being or whatever that they portray on me. But a lot of times I let people keep their projections of me or the way I'm supposed to act out of my own head. So that was really important to me, to always protect myself and who I am. So I've never really internalized what other people project on me. So it was important for me to fight the word felon and fight any of those labels that was placed on me or any of those barriers, because still I am who I am. I still need a place to live. I want a place to work. I want to take care of children and raise a family. Yes, I had a moment. I'm sure and I won't say we've all, but plenty of accountability and responsibility goes around to a lot of people, right? So Absolutely. If everyone internalized everything that they've done, we have an evil world. Totally. So it was important for me not to internalize that and turn into the person that I was labeled. And so one of the first things I recognized when I was in prison was that I needed to ensure that I built the tools necessary to go back out in the world and compete, right? And get a job if I ever got the opportunity. So it was a plan not to just sit on, well, this is who I am, nothing's going to work. No, if I get the opportunity, if the world ends tomorrow, if, by the grace of God, this world and this system gets some kind of empathy and compassion, I need to be ready, right? Like and I don't mean to be outrageous in saying this, but if white people decide the culture is no longer shaming, but it is a culture of empathy and compassion, I want to be ready. It's not currently there. Right. But if it is, like I said, so that's my mindset. I would say it to anybody. If you don't, and it sounds so cliche, but if you really don't try, there is never, the opportunity will be this, or the end will be the same every time. But if you give yourself a chance, there's a possibility. Right. And like I said, I went to nursing school based on them telling me, well, we don't know if you can get a license at the end. You just got to go and you go up to the board. And if the board wants to go, which I felt was like, wow, I'm going to invest all this money and I don't even know. So it was just like, well, the only thing that's going to happen is 5 years is coming either way. So either you get on this and try, or you don't do nothing in 5 years coming and you're still going to be in the same spot where I think I mentioned to you the other day, it came down to being on the bus and it was like, man, I got to choose between a car or living in a relationship out of convenience, right? Like, because I got to share bills with somebody. It's not really love. It's just like, yo, I'm just, I need this. And I just couldn't see myself doing that and committing to that and living in that for the rest of my life. I at least owed myself an opportunity to get out of that.
And it looks like you've made your opportunity and you were successful in doing so. Can we speak a little bit about mental health and wellness? You mentioned, about labels and specifically using the example of the word felon being attached and how you rebuked that attachment. Can you kind of put a connotation with mental health and how we approach mental health and mental health wellness on that same context?
Absolutely, mental health, and I'll tell you, it not only the story before was done so well. That was amazing. By the way, I loved it. And I think it happens even in family, right? We get these moments, these crises, and then let's just say for me and the family, I talk too much, right? So it becomes, oh, that's just Khalid. And I'm expected to act that way, right? And so I get labeled that way. And sometimes people don't want to hear it. And some people, they want to be entertained and they want to hear it. And it's like, I'm expected to be that way. So mental health is very much the same. Once we label people, we expect them to always have a problem, right? Like not looking at it as this is just a moment. We're flowing through life. I like to look at it as truly and honestly, mental wellness is an atypical condition, right? Like most of us is moving in and out of some form of mental illness every single day. And to deny that is to be dishonest. And I know at that point, I'm speaking to an ego, right? I'm not speaking to the person, I'm speaking to an ego, and they just haven't gotten there yet. But once you do, you'll see this world of mental health and labeling is meant to shame, basically, because we're all fearful of our own condition. And so, yes, much like felon, mental illness has become this subculture, right? Even within our culture, sort of like the orange is the new black, kind of like even below some of our most egregious words. So mental illness and yes, and so people treat you as if this is supposed to go on or continue through your whole life. You're supposed to be crazy every time you meet them, right? Like I'm supposed to commit a robbery, or I oftentimes it's funny. Oftentimes I work in the OR, and oftentimes I'll be standing next to a surgeon who is unfamiliar with me or uncomfortable, and oh man, you look like a tough guy. And I'm like, I'm really the nicest, kindest guy in the world. Like, but you know, just because I'm this big black guy, it's like you're projecting onto me, right? And it's like, but that's his own mental illness. That's his own fear. That's his own psychosis, so to say, of what I am supposed to act like. So this is.
What are your thoughts about how we can erase the stigma? I mean, like I said, I'm a nurse. You're a nurse. Let's keep it 100. We see this a lot. We see individuals who could benefit from having a conversation with a professional, you know, and speaking with a family member today who's also a nurse, and saying, you know, when you have some difficulty with your heart, you see a cardiologist. When you have some difficulty with your bones, you see an osteopath. If you know, it's like we put a profession to everything, but everyone shies away from the word therapy or psychiatry, psychology. How can we make an active attempt at erasing or eradicating that stigma? What are your thoughts about that? And what can we do in our roles?
I think I'll speak before our roles. I'll speak to what we can do as a society, right? Like, I think we have gatekeepers in our society, or hero systems, I like to say, people who are really important figures within our society who can give permission for things to be okay. And one of those things, I think religion has, I spoke at a conference last week, I think religion has a huge responsibility in turning the stigma around on mental health, right? It's not about just praying it away. I think you can have God and the therapist. And I think it's important for us to now start to holding some of our religious institutions responsible for having also those additional resources, right, for people and challenges. So people start to see those things more frequently in their places that they actually trust. Then we can start to remove some of that stigma. If we can have them in the barbershop where young men, now you don't have to go into some big institution where some big brick and mortar that looks menacing like a prison, and then also go inside there and you get all these unkind people. And how about we start to bring these things right into our communities with the heroes that we actually have there. So our churches,
meeting people where they are.
right, meeting people right where they are. So in our barbershops, our churches need to turn the corner on, like, God has given us all the tools we are going to get. We have them all. Like, we need to start using them, start understanding. Like, science does not erase God. I am a God-fearing man and I still believe in science. Like, we can have both. The social sciences are in on this. We understand what the psychological needs of human beings are. We need variety. We need security. We need love. We need achievement. We need giving, and we need growing. Those are the 6 psychological needs. And now, how do we meet those? Now that we can define them, how do we start to meet and measure those things? And like you said, it's time to bring them into the community, meet people where they are, with the people they trust, build the infrastructure. There's plenty of infrastructure. There's plenty of young men who are coming home from prison who wants to help. There's the Wallows of the world. There's people out there. There's resources. We just need to get it to them, support them, right? And give them the language that we have in order to do it. And as far as us, I think is nursing. I think it's going to be very important for us to start to make people feel very uncomfortable. I think it's time for people to come out of their comfort zone and see leadership and organizational responsibility. Like, have replaced our factories in our communities. They are the biggest employees, right? All those resources where people are coming into the community, taking them back to the suburbs, right? And leaving the lower jobs and not training people. Those things have a direct correlation with the health in that community, right? So we need to, and when you look on that CH&As every few years, the community health assessment needs, you see that mental health is one of the biggest things, and yet we're still buying robots, and yet we're still buying lasers, the latest technology to booster up our medical schools so that we get more money into our institutions, and yet that money isn't coming back into our institutions. And so I think it's time for us as nurses who identify these systems and seeing them, and it's time to talk to them and have some really uncomfortable conversations, right? And don't stop talking.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That is a whole lot. We have a comment from one of our attendees that, setting up therapy sessions at local barbershops, like you mentioned, meeting people where they are, bringing resources to them on a level that is not only relatable, but attainable, now getting back to your thing. Where are you now with your thing? I
am flowing through mental wellness and mental illness every day. And I say that jokingly. No, but
Aren't we all?
No, I am currently still very much engaged in the therapy. I love my therapist. I go to therapy every week. I dump a whole lot. I get rid of that trauma. And so my thing is a constant, right? Like, some of the temperaments and things that happened in our past have changed our pathways in our brains, maybe forever, right? And so it's important for us to continue to check on our behaviors. So I do that. Part of my thing is trying to challenge myself to get better, not perfect every day. Just trying to put that effort in and staying ahead of crisis, right? Like situations, feeling overwhelmed, having family responsibility, school responsibility, career responsibility. And so it's no different than the streets, it's the same stress, and trying to handle different stress, but the same level, just trying to do it a lot better on a day-to-day basis.
Can you tell me briefly how you approach that same conversation with someone who you're mentoring? I'm sure that in your everyday encounters with young Black men in particular, that they're like, wow, man, you get therapy? Like, how do you address that that jaded perspective from the naysayer or the person who is just not ready, but they could definitely benefit. We can all benefit.
I think when I went through my own little discovery of therapy, and it's sort of like when I got baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, and I came outside and I was very zealous and I wanted to preach to the whole world. Listen, I got the word of God, right? It was sort of the same thing with therapy. I came out very zealous. I just couldn't figure out, why can't people get this? And then I realized in these mentees and these young men, it's fear, right? It's fear of the culture. It's fear of standing out and being different. It's not normal. We live in a misogynistic culture where the value is placed on how many women can I get, not how can I commit to one and see this through. So it's fear of being weird, and it's nothing that I can say that can overcome that fear, right? I can't shame them into feeling worse. So what I try to do is we talk, we communicate, we work through process. I give my perspective on it, but I never force myself on to anyone, right? Like this is what I've gone through. This is how I've handled things in the past. And it's interesting you say meeting people where they are, because that's where I remember each time stripping away my ego. I'm meeting people where they are. They're not going to get it. Maybe they won't get it, but it ain't about me. It's not about forcing myself on them. I'm not trying to get them to follow me. I'm just trying to set them free. So at a time and a place when they're ready, I'm here and I'll keep talking. And part of that is coming from being a Jehovah's Witness, is I'll keep showing up at the door. You'll keep saying no. I'll be back.
You'll be back. Can you tell me a little bit about how you became engaged with Voice and Vision, and how you benefited from that engagement?
So I've met Ebony through a friend or a family member, and they introduced us, and Ebony called me up and we got to just talking. Like it's been healthy for me just to talk to people who share that passion. Oftentimes you're talking to people who is just like skeptical of everything.
Yes.
Talk to people with that vision and commitment to do the same thing that I want to do. It just it lights me, it reignites me. So it was a pleasure talking to Ebony and linking up with them and talking to Valerie. And I remember the conversation me and Valerie had, and it was like, it was kind of like she needed to check and see what I was going to say. And it was like, speak boldly, young man. It was like, it was just like, it lit the fire. So I'm gracious to be a part of an organization like this that's trying to move this conversation forward and really trying to help in any way that they can. So it's been tremendous.
And while your wife proved to be a helpful resource to you in engaging in therapy, as you mentioned, what are some resources that you can maybe share with our attendees that you in your experience have found that are available to those who want to learn more? Right now,
and I think through my looking through everything, Black Man Hill, they give out a free 8 sessions. You could call them, licensed therapists around, contact them. All they ask is that when they provide therapy service, that you go out and promote the therapy service, which I think is an excellent and great idea, kind of like scaling up and setting people free and then kind of setting this ripple effect. So I think Black Man Hill is a great organization. For me, that's been pretty much where I see the best of the resources right now.
Yeah. What can we do to make that different? I mean, are you taking some action other than your mentorship, as well as engaging with Voice and Vision? Are there some tangible things that we can do to help to increase resources and their availability to people who look like us?
Yes. I think as I mentioned earlier, I think what we need, I think one of the things that would be very helpful is identifying those individuals such as myself who have gone through this process, right? And I understand that what it's like for felons not to be able to I was able to buy my house before I was able to rent an apartment, right? So understanding that we can't just help people by saying, this is what you should do, here's some resources, but actually answering some of those challenges. But first we have to understand what challenges are there. And so this system is really layered with complexities. And so setting up what I kind of call anti-systems, trying to get people to see, we need to help people with therapy. Yes, number one. Gainful employment, so retraining our young men, and also housing, right? How do we answer some of these housing? Because one of the things I've seen as a nurse, working as a psychiatric nurse, you can fix these kids up, but you're still sending them back to the environment, right? So, so housing for our young men is very important. Somewhere that they can, start to take some responsibility of their own, even if it's in a shared group environment, sort of like bringing down some of that institutionalization and still building up some of those cooperation skills. So around housing, therapy, I call it the tripod: housing, therapy, and also gainful employment and retraining. So I hope to work with Voice and Risen on some of those ideas to get out and how we can actually make an impactful and meaningful progress.
And you have a unique skill set that we're going to touch on in just a moment, but I just want to briefly ask our attendees, if you have a question for Kali, ask that you use our question and answer speech bubbles at the bottom to type your question in. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. And while we're waiting for some questions to be posted that we've not already addressed, Kali, because of your unique role as a pediatric nurse and in psychology nonetheless, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Our children are forced to have a more antisocial, engagement or antisocial opportunity or environment, as opposed to the more social one that they would get if they were engaging in person in schools. What are some of the long-term effects that you perceive that these, very abrupt changes in our normal way of being are going to have or affect them in the long term?
It's really, I feel like through segregation, right, is what caused this anxiety between the races to not be able to, a lot of it is just uncomfortableness, right? So it's less like you have to practice social skills, just like you would have to practice dribbling the basketball, getting out, feeling comfortable, making conversation, and dealing with other people who have varying opinions and ideas other than yours without shutting down or falling apart, right? These are all skills that we need to practice every day to feel comfortable. My fear is in the long term that this isolation causes that segregation just a little bit more. And I think as nurses, we understand how that just working with people who just aren't comfortable working with people who aren't like them. And it's not necessarily they're mean or evil or have some bad intentions. It's just like they have social anxiety themselves. And I think through a lot of conditioning, a lot of people already have social anxiety. And I think this will give us a lot of social anxiety moving forward. And I worry about what it is or what it's like when we come back together and try to deal with each other. And so I'm hoping organizations see, number one, that we need to bake into the process conflict resolution, right? Not just resolving conflict with a pizza party or the latest party committee, right? Like really actually sitting employees down, really going through conflicts that cause some of the inefficiency at work. So there's a price tag to that as well. So maybe they'll get motivated there if we can identify and tag a price on it, which various studies have. But really start to drive that and see that this conflict resolution at the workplace is driving much of the inefficiency, and it's also driving some of the anxiety and just mental illness happening, I know specifically in the African American population.
Mm-hmm. You talked about anxiety, and I just wanted to ask, again, we're in a pandemic state. Socially, there's a lot of conflict, as you mentioned, in the world. Racial conflict in the world. With this, again, a very abrupt change, you have parents who are working from home, you have students that are learning from home, increasing anxieties on both sides. What are some things that we can do to kind of meet in the middle and try to minimize some of the lasting effects that anxiety can have on our lives?
I think one of the things that's been really easy for me during this pandemic is to wear all my hats at one time and try to do all those jobs as if I'm any good at any of them anyway. So recognizing that I need to make space specifically and intentionally to be a student at times, right? Mm-hmm. And then making intentional times to be a father, making very intentional times to be a father or a husband, and also making it very intentional to be a career man. So I think it's been very easy because we've been on top of each other, locked in, not really socializing, to really just mush everything together. Yeah. And it's been really important for me to really be intentional and try to be intentional about breaking that up.
Nice. And have you seen any of the effects thus far on, I know you say you're working in the OR primarily, but I'm assuming you get the opportunity to engage with your pediatric patients at some point in time. Do you see any of the aftermath evident to you right now with the social disconnects that children are experiencing at the moment?
Well, there's one of the questions I try to engage them as I'm willing them back to the OR, and you try to keep them calm and, build up some rapport and some trust. I'm asking them, where you going to school virtually? How's it going? I don't like it. Mm-hmm. They look very just down, right? Yeah. Like they're ready to go. They're just over it. I literally haven't met a kid that said, oh, it's been great, right? Every kid I walk through, it's just like, I'm over it, or I don't want to do it anymore. And I worry about that because you can see them becoming a little bit more and more depressed.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that these are going to have lasting effects that will, add to some of the challenges that we're already seeing in our adult population as it pertains to mental health wellness?
I absolutely see it as being the one. And I'm hoping we respond. I think it feels like this is an inflection moment around mental health. Right? Mm-hmm. Like I feel like there's more priority. There's more people willing to be transparent and talk about their struggles. So right now it really feels like a moment where we perhaps might be committed to it. Oftentimes, I think we still have an idea of what mental illness looks like, someone slobbering and some schizophrenic, and it's not. It's like we have to kind of rebrand what it really looks like. And I think we're in that process now, but I can see this.
Talk more about that. I want to hear more about the rebranding of what mental illness looks like and is to people. Speak a little bit more about that for me.
Yeah, so for way too long, mental illness has looked like other, right? It's mm-hmm. always like other. And it hasn't really been a really internal discovery or journey for many people. And I think many people are starting to get to that point. And I think that's why I think COVID has been an amazing year, right? Because I think it sent us home. And if you really look at it, the first thing we bought was toilet paper, which says a lot to me, right? Like we had enough vanity to think, man, if the world's going to end, my butt's going to be clean. Like,
that's one way to look at it.
like that was what you thought of, the first thing you thought of.
Yeah.
So I think this was a real good point where like the jig is up. There's nothing else that we can buy. There's no other kind of, commerce behavior that we can do in order to like dull our senses to not pay attention to ourselves. So I think it's making us pay a little bit more attention to ourselves and how we feel. So I think it's been an amazing an amazing year. And so I think that rebranding is starting to happen because people are starting to look at them. Mental health just doesn't look like them. It looks like me. It doesn't look like the guy in the middle of the street going crazy and just, t-shirt off or walking in front of the truck. It looks like me. Depression looks like me. Anxiety looks like me. On a daily basis, it looks like me. And I think we're getting there. I think we have to continue to normalize it in that way. And I think that takes a lot of bravery, and we need as many brave leaders as we can get.
And we need a lot of conversations about it, like the one we're having right now, very transparent, authentic, and enlightening conversations, portrayals, even like what we've had from the film that we just previously watched, that this is something that mental illness and mental health wellness touch on the lives of all of us, whether we identify it readily or not. But the conversations help to make it more prevalent and also allow there to be space for it to be a norm, as you say.
Correct.
I'm gonna end with asking you what some of your inspirations have been, unless we get another question.
My inspiration, my daughters have been an inspiration to me, right? I'm living in a house with 3 women and just
how's that going for you?
Me and my dog have our good days and bad days, but but overall we love it, and I think it's been really good. Even with a loving, caring wife that I have, it's been amazing because it gives me a different perspective to see that other set of tools that women have. We call them feminine skill sets, but that's if you're misogynistic. But those cooperation, those listening skills, wanting the best for others, like I'm learning it from my wife and my 2 daughters, and it's amazing to just have them with me.
Awesome. Well, if you have any parting comments, now would be the time. We appreciate to hear any insights or take-home points that you'd like to share with us today, as well as any current projects that you're working on that people can learn more about. Could you share?
Yes. So first and foremost, I would like to thank Valerie and Ebony, and as well as yourself, Alicia. I really appreciate this and this opportunity, you guys, and just this space and just your passion around mental health. I really want to thank you guys for this opportunity and platform. And my take home from this is, please don't let anyone define you. Don't even let your generational trauma define you. For your parents, what I've found in my life is sometimes parents can be the biggest killers of dreams, right? Even when it comes to parents, fathers who want you to be the next basketball player, rapper, cousin, whoever wants you to be, whatever. Find who you are, dig in there, discover who you are, and actually be brave enough to choose that person, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to live with all those consequences, right? While all these people move on. So choose your life, be very intentional, and it's uber difficult, but I'm here. You can find me at kyounger@fypc.com. Email me, ask me, and for every young person who care, ask me how to navigate tough, difficult conversations, having sons, having conflict, or trouble, relationship issues. You can contact me, ask my opinion. I'm always trying to help and support others. Right now, I'm currently working on a project with trying to get the home health care and trying to help felons get more acclimated and a step into home health care and learning those roles or those soft skill sets and trying to prepare them for nursing school and getting into the healthcare system. Because through my discovery of healthcare studying in my master's program, much of our problems and lack of access comes around the building up of infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. The more that we can train and build up these systems with our people, taking care of other people who look like them, the more we'll have access to healthcare, right? It's just not about money and resources that way, but it's about manpower and training training and understanding and giving people an opportunity and not just labeling them felons. So working on the home health care business, forever young personal care, geared towards felons and people who have those things, trying to help you navigate into nursing school and any other desire, medical school that you might have. Don't let any of it stop you, because it's possible to get and do all of these things with a felony or anything else.
Well, amen to that. Thank you so much for sharing with us and for being a resource to not only us today, but to others in your everyday profession and all the other roles and hats that you have. We thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo, well, I tell you, this has been a second amazing day. For all those who had the opportunity to tune in on yesterday, this was what I like to call the dessert buffet. Okay, we fed you well yesterday. We equally, ended off our entrees with something delightful today as well. We hope that you once again walked away full. We hope that you have grasped some additional knowledge on mental health wellness, as well as the resources that are available to you. And if you need more resources, we ask that you go to our website at www.voiceandvisioninc.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Voice and Vision Inc. And I also wanted to redirect you to our Help and Hope guide. This is called Help and Hope from Families Who Have Walked the Walk. It's a 300-page book. You can download it from the website. Substance Use, The Growing Need to Know, provides a reader with a foundational understanding of substance use and addiction. And without further ado, I want to bring back our founder, Valerie Melroy, for some parting remarks, and then we will close an end to this very awesome experience. I'd like to thank all of our speakers that participated today, Reverend Kevin Hunt, Dr. Tim Barksdale, Pastor Ben, Carlene Robinson, and Yvette Gagne, as well as to Kali Younger. I want to thank you all for providing me the opportunity to be your moderator and host today, and for Valerie for opening this up with this wonderful opportunity. And if I missed anyone, please fault the head and not the heart. Valerie, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you so much, Alicia. You are an excellent moderator. You're amazing, keeping the flow, doing the show, having the know. I mean, I don't want to be too corny here, but yes, you're great. So thank you so much for keeping it going. And I really do believe that this conference gave a lot for our listeners. I learned a lot. Ebony Walker-Edwards, thank you so much.
Ebony, yes.
Oh my goodness, you really did an amazing job of preparing us all, of setting the stage, of helping us to be prepared and ready, of identifying, there you are, identifying this, helping us to identify the speakers. And I'll tell you, just an amazing job. We could not have done this conference without you, and we certainly could not have managed it without Alicia. So thank you so much. Thank you to Brian Pete, who is one of our technical persons overseeing the technology, to Sherry Schiffman from Voice and Vision, who is also behind the scenes all the time at Voice and Vision as our office manager, our director of the office, really, my director really keeps everything flowing. Thank you so much to you, Trinity Banks, you've been on to help with technology. And for the whole outreach and education team, which we mentioned, and most of them you heard from, thank you. And to our speakers, my goodness, I can't even say how full I am. Like Alicia said, amazing speakers. I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for the transparency that people talked about and their own story, because that's what's going to make a difference when people start speaking out, when we have short films and documentaries and movies about what's going on in the community of Black and African American people around mental health, around substance use, around physical health, around disparities in insurance or whatever, if we can say the truth, and also around all the great work that people do. We heard great speakers today. We heard Dr. Tim Barksdale. Amazing. I didn't know there were so many different types of angers, or I hadn't thought about that. And then, of course, talking about some of the tools with mindfulness and journaling and meditation, and just identifying, even from his own story, different points in my own life, I was able to think, wow, yeah, I better check on that. That's really, really helpful. And then the movie, and with Ms. Robinson, Carolyn, and Miss Gagne, and just looking at that, and wow, again, I talked about suicide in the beginning and how people need help, and we don't have to have suicide. So we want to get people help. And I was so moved every time I see that, I cry, and just know that we have a lot of work to do, but their boldness and discussion around their own struggles, just amazing once again. And then Kali, wow. Yes, you're going to be a regular at Voice of Vision. I'm telling you right now, if that's okay with you. Really, I think our hearts beat the same way. I learned a lot from you, and was really happy that you were talking about some of the institutions and how we even need to make them look different, as well as the kind of treatment we're getting. And I like the statement about helping people to be uncomfortable, like challenging people, because people like comfort, believe me. We all know that. We all like comfort. But I think that was amazing. And of course, the technology with Ms. Humphrey and Dr. Webb around the authentic self, and really thinking about how to make that congruent. And I'm seeing if I missed anybody, because I sure don't want to. We had such amazing speakers. And of course, all the Voice of Vision team who spoke. Michael giving all the resources. And I do want to put in about Chester County right now and outreach and education. They're the ones, Chester County Human Services, that have a contract with us to do this work. There are a plethora of resources in Chester County. There's a crisis line 24/7, a drug and alcohol. You need help with any kind of substance. There's a 866 number to get in touch with people during work hours. There's a PA help, get help now, 800 number 24/7. There are 5 information and referral centers throughout all of Chester County. So you can call, probably can't walk in right now, but you can call and find out how to get help. They'll help you not just with mental health and substance use, they'll help you with housing or utilities, how to get help for food, needing food. There's also, if you're experiencing any type of homelessness, or you know anyone that's at risk for homelessness, you call 211, and Chester County is contracted with them to be able to help you. So again, Alicia mentioned our Help and Hope guide. I'm going to hold it up. It's on our website. There's resources at the end of the book in Montgomery, Delaware, Chester, and Bucks County, where you can find help. And in here we have lots of stories around how to keep hope alive during your most difficult times. Because as you heard from our speakers today about the support that's needed during times of difficulty. And there are people out there, and Voice and Vision is one of the supporters. When this organization was started in 1995, now 25 years ago, and really became a nonprofit in 1997. We all have some type of a label, or our family member does. We don't define ourselves by that label. We define ourselves as human beings with a purpose and a dream and a desire, who have many challenges, but many strengths and many gifts. So we always try to look for the strengths first. We look at the gifts first, because that's what's going to carry you through. And we look at the relationships, because having someone on your team that believes in you, that can help you identify what's great about you, because everybody has more than one thing great about themselves. Having someone on that team to find that out. Mentoring young men, like Kali said. And you know what? We did work in the barbershops this last year, Voice of Vision did. We were out and about, and we even sponsored free haircuts at one of them, and we gave away vouchers for food. We did a barbershop luncheon to honor barbers, because guess why? They are the therapists many times listening. We have something in the works for beauty shops as well. And so we have to think of how to get to people in non-traditional ways, because mental health matters. All of our mental health matters. So to all of our speakers, we wish you the best. We are happy that we identified and provided this platform for you. We hope that this will open a bigger door for each one of you. And I know it has helped Voice and Vision to begin to think about what's our next steps. In 2021, we have to think about funding, and we have to think about how to do this work, maybe way beyond Chester County, which we'd like to do. We'd like to be worldwide, and it sounds like some of you that spoke with us would like it as well. So as we partner together to help people in our communities, our neighbors, our family members, and those that we might not even know yet, as we partner together to help them, I believe that there's always hope. There's always hope. And that it's going to take a village. You know, someone said that before. Hillary Clinton, I believe it was. It is going to take a village. But you know what? We had a village here at this conference. And so let's continue to partner. So we wish you the best. We wish you happy holidays to our Jewish brothers and sisters. Happy Hanukkah. To those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. To those who celebrate Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa. And I know other holidays that will come around. To all of our Muslims, brothers of faith and sisters, we wish you the best. And to everyone that has had an opportunity to tune in or will tune in, we wish you the best. And we wish you a healthy, prosperous 2021. So thank you for your time.